Good afternoon and welcome to today's Naturally Chicago webinar, Becoming a Category King. I'm happy to turn it over to Jim Slama, Managing Director of Naturally Chicago.
Thanks, Bob. With an all-star lineup, our webinar today will provide a roadmap for brands that want to soar to the top in sales for their product category. The key to success in this area is to make your brand or product stand out from the competition. The webinar will unpack how companies can shift their thinking from making better products to forging entirely new market categories. Successful companies will grow their sales and market cap. The webinar was inspired by a podcast produced by S2G Ventures, a Naturally Chicago partner. It featured a conversation between host Chuck Templeton of S2G and the team at Play Bigger, a firm that consults with companies on category design. The groundbreaking book, Play Bigger, was the first to describe the process of category design. Mike Bruno from Play Bigger will begin the webinar today with a presentation that describes category design and gives examples of companies that have truly excelled at it. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to share my screen here and we will get underway. So yeah, I'm Mike Bruno. I'm a partner at Play Bigger, and as Jim said, we're a category design firm. Basically work with companies to try to find problems, hidden problems that customers maybe don't know exist, and then create entirely new markets around those to have success in those markets. So that's who I am. I'm super excited to be a part of this panel. There's an interesting thing about category design, which is Play Bigger, of course, didn't invent it. It's something that's been happening for a very long time. I'm going to get into some examples that are 100 years old. But there are some folks who have this sort of natural, innate talent for developing categories. I think this panel is a great cross-section of those types of folks. But there's also a sort of way of doing this, a methodology that really anybody can learn. And that's what my goal is today, to try to share some of those steps to creating a category, give people the idea of how to think like a category designer and the methodology for doing that. So with that, let's get into it. So first things first, and I can't belabor this enough, category design is about creation. We're talking about making something new, different, not the same. You can't belabor that enough when you're talking category design. And the reason is because every product and service that you've ever loved, it exists because some human person who is real and not from on high or Gartner had a unique insight about an unsolved problem. And then not only did they create a product and a company to solve that, but they designed an entire category and market around that problem. When they do that, they drive demand where it didn't exist, urgency for change, pricing power, and really long-term value. And here's the thing. Companies that design the categories are in the best position to win those categories. So it's not a guarantee, but it is a great advantage, as we'll see when we get further into the presentation. So we're all food people. I thought I'd take us to our comfort zone, the space that we like the most, the supermarket, when I explain how category design actually works. So when you think about how brains work with heuristics and cognitive biases. People talk about this stuff all the time. We use categories as a way to shortcut the way that we navigate the world, to make quick decisions and be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish in as little time as possible. And nowhere is that more evident than when you're in the supermarket. When you're going into a Whole Foods with 40,000 items in it, and you've got your sort of recipe with known as meatballs, and you know you need those 10 ingredients, and you got 10 minutes before you got to pick the kids up from school, like, how are you possibly going to do that without categories? It really is a miracle when you think about it. You're walking into this insanely crowded space with all of these products, but you're able to get in and get out. And the reason why is we have aisles, and on top of those aisles, we have signs, and on those signs, we have categories of things we need. So we know exactly where to get the meat, the eggs, the Parmesan cheese, and whatever else she throws in there. So it's a really great way to sort of think about things, and a really great example is the supermarket. But it's also interesting that we're looking at the frozen food section, because this is actually a category that 100 years ago was designed by Clarence Birdseye, who is in fact a real person, the person who created Birdseye Foods. And what he ended up doing was he was spending time up north with the Inuit people. And he was watching them as they were catching fish, and what they were doing was essentially flash freezing the fish so that in leaner times they'd have, nutrients and flavorful fish to be able to eat, to tide them over until the fish came back. So his insight about that is people can't get all the nutrients and flavors that they want all year round because, well, fruits and veggies have seasons. So he designed a category, which is called frozen foods, based on that insight. But what's interesting is it couldn't stop right there. If he had just designed frozen food, there'd be no way to get the food from point A to point B, and there'd be no place to store it. He had to create a blueprint and an infrastructure for how this would all work. Refrigerated rail cars, he had to work with retailers to put refrigerated units inside of their stores so that people would be able to buy it. So he designed all of this and created a category that still persists today. So it turns out that while some people have a gift for category design, like I said, there's this sort of like way of doing this that you can actually follow, and it works pretty well, which of course is called category design. So here's Coach Lasso telling us to pick the create door. Let me just tell you what's behind the compete door. So the compete door has the status quo, right? And in the status quo, you probably have an entrenched leader. And if you are that entrenched leader, good job, you should stay there. We call that category king sometimes that play bigger. So you're going to be really successful there. But if you're not, the problem is that that category king has a whole system of extracting value out of the status quo, the most value possible. And when you come in with usually smaller budgets and less of a mechanism for being able to extract all of that value, the odds are really stacked against you. What you can do when you pick this door over here, though, is kind of a judo move where you're using the status quo against that entrenched leader. You're actually fighting not the leader, but the status quo. And when you do that, when you take that on and you envision a new reality, create a new market, that's when those entrenched leaders start to get into trouble. So categories have a life cycle. And it tends to look something like this, where early on, there'll be some kind of a new technology or idea that people get really excited about. And in this stage, which is the define phase on the left, you see tons of products, tons of features, tons of benefits, lots of stuff swirling around, lots of vendors, but you don't see a lot of problems. You could see this right now, actually, in Gen AI, right? Gartner says we've just entered the trough of disillusionment for Gen AI, where the sort of excitement over anything AI to incorporate in your business has given way to, well, what does this actually do for me? And that sort of leads us into this develop phase, where somebody figures out what the problem or problems are that this new idea could solve, and they develop an entire category. These are the sort of components of a solution to that problem, and they create a new market. And when they do that, they're in a great position to then go on to dominate it. The vendors that have just benefits, features, and whatever fall off. Those that follow quickly, well, they might stick around. But in our research, which this is peer-reviewed research that was in Harvard Business Review, 76% of the market cap goes to the category king on average. So 24% left over for those hangers on. When you design the category, you're best positioned to end up in that category king position. Something really interesting about this is a lot of times when we talk to companies, they're talking to us about TAM, and TAM makes a lot of sense, and we think it's important. And especially when you're talking to investors, what's your TAM? How do I know this is going to be a good idea? But actually, the way most people think about that as, hey, there's a certain set of customers that we can target, and they're this many, and they have this much money, and this is the total value of that TAM. If you take into account these category economics, you're not really talking about that 100% TAM. You're talking about less than a quarter. Whereas if you design a category and you find a problem that's worth solving, that people are willing to pay for, and that there are enough people to make that a viable business, then you can do the math very quickly and come up with something called category potential. And if you do it right and you end up as the category king, you can obviously create a lot of value. All right, so those are the basics, but here are the kind of steps to get there. And really, there are 4 key steps to sort of developing the strategy, and then we got to bring it into the world. So step number 1 is create that founding insight and problem. Like I identify what the unsolved or unseen problem is that your audience has that you can reasonably solve. This is really, really hard to do. And it's not a linear thing. That's what makes it so hard. If it was linear, if it was easy to think of what this problem is, the status quo machine would have done it already. So you have to spend a lot of time thinking about an alternate reality where a problem that you take for granted or that you're not even thinking about gets solved and what that does to the world. Once you've figured out what that problem is, then you need to start figuring out what the solution is. So that's when we move into this category definition. What are the components of the solution? If we had this problem, what would we need? Now, chances are, if you're listening to this webinar, you have a business that has products. And if you have a business that has products, you might have some of the components of the solution already, but you might not have all of them, and they might not be organized the right way. So it's important to think about where these things fit and also what you might need to create in order to viably fulfill this sort of vision you have for the future with your category. And then you need to name it something. So you've got this problem, you've got components of a solution, which together are called whatever your category is. And then you put it all together in what we call a category blueprint. Essentially, this is like the RFP for the category. If you want to come into this category, these are all of the components that you need. So for bird's eye, rail cars, frozen food sections in grocery stores, and then of course the frozen foods themselves. And then you need a point of view that puts it all together. Here is the problem. This is what it's costing people. This is why it needs to change. We believe it can be changed with an entirely new category that does A, B, C, and D, relates to each other like this, as we show them in the blueprint, and ultimately has this kind of a benefit. So it's an emotional point of view on what the category should be. It's something that becomes the source code then for all of the sort of communications, everything that you do, the innovation pipeline at your company. But you've developed this thing that's so great, it makes you want to cry, you love it so much, but nobody cares. So then the next stage is, how do you get first the company via mobilization, getting the entire company on board with what you're doing? We often do that via what we call a burning of the boat ceremony, where we say, this is the new future, the new vision that we're going to bring into reality for the world. And then we do lightning strikes, which is to take that point of view and that problem and surround that audience wherever they are over and over and over again at a specific moment of time. And we usually do that twice a year, spend about 80% of the marketing budget on those lightning strikes, rather than this sort of always on, what we call peanut butter marketing. You're going to really capture attention and get people to not be able to escape your problem. Then you're going to talk about your category and then your product in that order. So it's, you're moving from status quo to something completely different. That's how great categories work. That's what separates category design from feature one-upmanship, creating something better. We're not creating something better, we're creating something altogether different. So with that, I wanted to just share a couple of quick examples. These aren't play bigger examples, but they're CPG examples that I really admire. So I'm going to walk you through first Athletic Brewing Company. So when you look at most category curves, you sort of have this from to. There's always a from where were you to where are you going. So you think about that market where sort of non-alcoholic beers were. It was the sort of like, apologetic O'Doul's in the corner, dusty brands, taking away alcohol, but really a whole lot more when you think about it. You drink a non-alcoholic beer in 2016, it's saying something about you. It might be stigmatizing. And you're moving that into a non-alcoholic craft brew movement with what Athletic did, where you are not only giving people a non-crappy tasting non-alcoholic beer, but you're adding and enabling a lifestyle on top of that. This isn't about taking away alcohol. This is about giving you something else. There's very hard to find the zero alcohol on the Athletic Brewing Company branding. So you're moving from stigmatizing to normalizing. And by the way, from $6 billion to $22 billion and an $800 million evaluation for them right now. Their problem, plastered all over the place. We want to revolutionize beer for the modern adult. We've got to take it out of the dark ages. Whenever they communicate, this is what they're talking about, whether that's directly or indirectly. Also interesting, so retail challenges and channel strategy gatekeepers can be an issue. Their success started with D2C. And when you look at the way that they organize their product page, this doesn't look like you're buying beers or beverages or food. It looks like what you might find if you're at a clothing or lifestyle retailer, because that's what they're selling, the lifestyle. And they brought it to life via lightning strike, like the Spartan Race, a partnership with the Spartan Race, where none of these folks are, feeling bad about what they're drinking. They're drinking this because it's enabling a new lifestyle. It is a different kind of product. O'Doul's does not belong here, and nor does Budweiser. So that was real quick, athletic. I'm going to blitz through Kind Bar. Kind Bar fascinates me because I don't know if you know, it's an inside out Snickers, and it's made of ingredients that are, a little bit healthier, but you could see the peanuts and all that, but it really, for all intents and purposes, is very similar to what that candy bar was. And at the time that it came out, your options basically were have a Snickers, have a Twix, or one of these on the left, the Power Bar, Balance Bar. And the deal was like either really good tasting, really bad for you candy bars, or like really garbage tasting, but perhaps good for you, nutrition bars. So Kind Bar comes out and says, we're not about candy bars and we're not health food. We're about this new thing, which is called healthy indulgence. And that leads to a $22 billion category that also, led to a $5 billion acquisition from Mars, which, by the way, makes the right side in Snickers, which I always find interesting. So framing the problem in a different way, creating a slightly different product, and then creating an entire category on the back of that enabled Kind to really achieve, some incredible results. Their problem, that sort of gap between unhealthy snack bars, health-focused options that lacked indulgent flavor. And then they brought it to life via their lightning strikes and, always standing for, this was their Do the Kind Thing campaign that ran throughout the early stages of their existence and start to, really speak to that healthy, indulgent lifestyle. That's really all I have to share. One other thing I wanted to talk about is I brought this because these are the different ways that we work with companies. And the reason I put it up here is because a lot of people ask, like, okay, is this the right time to do category design? Are we too early? Are we too late? And the truth is category design makes sense for all different stage companies. So this Ignite is something we designed for seed, pre-seed companies, Activate for, growth stage, and Immerse can be anywhere from, pre-IPO to public companies. But the problems, the role of category design actually changes based on the stage of the company and where you're at. So for Ignite, a lot of companies, in those early stages are like, what's my product market fit? But you also have to be thinking about like, what's my problem market fit? What story, what vision do I see? And how am I telling investors about that? How am I telling potential prospects about that? For Activate, for those growth stage companies, how am I turning this into something that I think it can be, getting beyond the bucket that people are trying to put me into? And then for these like bigger companies, even public companies, a lot of times you'll see companies on a rocket ship and they are category kings, but the rocket ship is coming back to Earth and they're going to end up at the bottom of the ocean. So what do you do now? So it's different depending on the stage of the company, but there are different applications and use cases and processes for category design for all stage companies. And with that, Jim, that's everything that I've got. I think I did that reasonably on time.
Good job. Yes, you did. Thank you. Excited to introduce the rest of our panelists. We've got John Foraker, Kat Cole, Rashid Ali, Sean Riley, and Emily Groden. So I'd like each of the panelists, just a little introduction of yourself and your company. Let's start with John.
Hi, everybody. I'm John. I got into the industry in like the mid 90s. My first role was as an investor in Annie's, which was a tiny organic food company that was on the East Coast. I joined that full-time as an employee in 2003, and then we took it public in 2012, sold to General Mills in 2017 or 2014, and then I stayed with General Mills for 3 years on their U.S. leadership team, ran lots of their natural businesses, learned a lot working in a big CPG. It was really great learning. And then I came over here and joined Ari Raz and Cassandra Curtis and Jen Garner at Once Upon a Farm in 2017. And we've been on a mission to disrupt the kid nutrition space since that time. Happy to be here.
Hey, thank you, John. Kat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kat Cole. I come to the CPG category via restaurants and food service. About 14 years ago, I was on the early side of the wave of the restaurant to retail CPG trend, bringing beloved global brands that were restaurants and franchise snack brands into grocery and food service at scale, building a few billion-dollar brands with Cinnabon, Auntie Anne's, Jamba Juice, Moe's, Southwest Grill, and more. Evolved into a passionate nutrition freak for my own health reasons, had a couple kids, got serious about nutrition. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and all of a sudden my world got laser focused on health and health span. And it led me to bring together two passions that had evolved: CPG, purely consumer products, and health and nutrition. And that led me to what was then called Athletic Greens. And I joined a founder-led company at the time that had been bootstrapped to 160 million. This was 3 years ago. And we together led a fundraise. And since then, the business has grown by 4x in the last 2.5, 3 years, to a business that still today is a daily health drink. Our AG1, our core product, is a daily health drink that combines a multivitamin, pro and prebiotics, and nutrient-dense whole foods that is loved and trusted by Olympians and athletes and busy professionals like us. And that single product, single channel business has grown into over a $600 million a year business by driving disruption, creating quality, what you just heard from Mike, and continuing to raise the bar in the supplement space and in the foundational nutrition category. And much expansion is ahead. So glad to be here with you all.
Excellent. Rashid.
Yeah, Jim, hello. My name is Rashid Ali. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Chomps. I live just outside of Chicago with an amazing wife and 3 kids. I'm proud to say that Chomps is now the fastest growing brand in all of food based on the last 52-week reset. And it's just crazy to see the growth we've experienced in the last couple of years. Pete and I founded the company 13 years ago with really no experience in retail and minimal food experience. I have a background of management and strategy consulting, really focused on operations, finance, accounting. Pete brought a skill set of creativity, marketing, and sales, but collectively we were able to take this brand off the ground and with a premium line of meat sticks. And you can now find us in most all natural, conventional mass channels, as well as some club. And yeah, excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Sean Riley.
Yeah, Sean Riley, nice to meet you guys. I come from like an Animal House style apartment in Chicago where me and my buddies were drinking too many beers, eating too many burritos, taking big nasty shits, and toilet paper was not getting the job done. So kind of your classic, how is there a better way? And baby wipes was the only thing out there. So we said we got to go create this whole thing that gets people cleaner and actually talks to people in a real way. So what would some dudes sitting on a couch call it? Dude wipes, of course. So that's what we did about 12 years ago. Similar, to Rashid's story, without much experience, and just started trying to disrupt the toilet paper aisle one butt at a time.
Thank you, Sean. Emily, that's a tough act to follow.
I was gonna say, my name is Emily Groden. I'm the founder and CEO of Evergreen. We make frozen waffles in decadent dessert flavors that have one full serving of fruits and veggies in them. Like many of the people on this panel, I have zero CPG experience. I was a lawyer in my past life. Never planned to make waffles for a living, but was driving home from work one night, heard a podcast that happened to be talking about waffles of all things, and basically said it's this huge category in grocery retail, and it's 80% still that brand that rhymes with Legos. I had never thought about waffles before. Don't think I ever would have thought about them again, but I was pregnant with my first daughter, and it just made me stop and think like, well, shoot, I'm not naive enough to think I'm going to cook for her from scratch every morning, but I don't want to feed her that brand necessarily every morning. So what else is out there? And went searching for a better for you option that was already on shelves. And to my dismay, realized that they were all kind of like that brand, just in healthier looking packaging. So bought a mini waffle iron, started making waffles for my girls. And I like to say it's a hobby that's gotten really blown out of proportion. We're now in about 4,000 doors nationwide. On the spectrum of industry legends to rising stars on this panel, we're definitely on the rising star side. Still have a long way to go, but super honored to be invited to the party.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. We're looking forward to your category leadership sometime soon.
Yeah.
So along those lines, I'd love to hear from each of the panelists about your company's category or categories and what you and your firm have done to make your products a category leader. We'll go in the same order. Start with John.
Okay, so in 2017, when I came over here, I thought we were going to create a fresh baby food company. And that's what we started doing. We're in about 300 stores. We were testing coolers in little places. We were trying to figure it out. It was really hard to put coolers in baby aisles. So we ended up moving over into the dairy aisle and created a line that became our biggest business, which is really kids snacking. It's fresh kids snacking. We use fresh fruits and vegetables, incredible nutritious stuff, and we treat it with HPP, just high pressure. It's always treated in cold chain. It's always under 40 degrees, all the way from our plant all the way through to the shelf. And has a relatively short shelf life, and we built a lot of success in that category. We're in about 17,000 doors in the US now, with usually a full shelf to 2 shelves there. And but we never stopped working on the baby category. We actually did multiple tests with baby coolers, and now have come onto a scalable model that is rolling nationally, and we're basically going to be fresh petting the baby aisle, and it's happening right now. And if you go into a grocery retail store in the next 5 years, there's a pretty good chance there's going to be a baby cooler in the baby aisle, and that'll most likely be driven by us. And then we built the business to pretty big size. We're about $250 million run rate in consumption right now. And we waited for a long time to really innovate outside of that set of products. But in November last year, we launched some refrigerated bars. And in March this year, we launched into dry baby snacking. And those extensions have gone exceptionally well. And so we're really just trying to build a modern kid nutrition company from baby through kid that's going to meet the needs of parents who are looking for much better, cleaner, healthier nutrition for their kids and families as they grow without all that added sugar.
That's great. Kat.
Yeah, so our business is quite unique, being at this scale with one product and one channel. We only recently, like just a few weeks ago, put up a very limited offering on Amazon. So it's truly been just drinkag1.com. And the reason for that is quite simply, it is a complex and high quality product. People drink it mostly every day, and they do that for years because of the benefits they feel and see. And over those years, we're a 14-year-old company. A lot of people think we're like a recent hot D2C COVID success. It's been 14 years. Never had a headquarters, never had a storefront, never been on a retail shelf. And we will be soon. The time has come to meet our customers where they are. But a few things happened over the years that are a part of the secret to success that build on a foundation of a truly high quality and complex product. It is very difficult to blend 75 mostly whole food sourced ingredients with no sugars, no juices, and no sweeteners and get it to taste good enough for people to drink it every day. It is a full-blown multivitamin, so disrupting the supplement category, phytonutrient blend, creating this powdered supplement to help supplement our diets and modern life. We have gaps in our nutrients that we have access to, and nutrient diversity and nutrient density, and our guts are a mess. And so we need support. If we could all eat kimchi every meal and perfectly balanced evolving phytonutrients, we might not need the supplementary support that we do. And so the founder identified these needs. He was very sick. He went to a clinic. They gave him 100 pills and powders, and realized he wasn't absorbing many of them, and asked why, if it's the highest quality ingredients. And the issue was gut health. And he unlocked this concept that nutrients without gut health is suboptimal. Gut health without nutrients is suboptimal. Put them together where they start to work together synergistically, make it tasty enough to drink every day. And you get the daily replenishment that our cells need, the daily gut health support that we need, and then the benefits compound: energy, digestion, and over time, immunity, mostly driven by gut health and nutrients. But there were innovations over those 14 years. We used to have flaxseed in the product, and then realized that something like a fiber being taken with directly consumed vitamins and minerals could negatively affect absorption. So we took it out. Flax seeds are great for you, by the way. It's just when you're trying to optimize absorption for a premium product, you probably should separate them a bit. Adding in herbs and adaptogens and things that research started to bear, upgrading minerals and vitamins to methylated form. So they were the highest quality, most bioavailable, most readily absorbed by the body, upgrading the probiotics to some of the most researched form of probiotics. And that journey continues. And then the latest piece of that in leading the category is not only using peer-reviewed research on ingredients to formulate a whole food supplement, but actually investing in double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized human clinical trials on the effectiveness of the product, which is lengthy and quite expensive and very rare in the space. And we are early in that journey and starting to publish those studies, and many more underway. So as a part of our DNA, we have disrupted multiple categories by realizing it was becoming quite confusing. D2C allowed us to have a direct relationship with the customer and learn and message something that was a bit new and complex. And then constant innovation and elevating of quality kept us at a forefront of what has become an incredibly competitive and crowded category.
That's wonderful. Wow. Good work. Sean.
Me. Yeah, so Dude Wipes, I think the way we like to frame it, like we were the first native brand to our category. So I think that's similarly to a lot of people's stories, like no brand had ever supplanted themselves in the flushable wipes category and said, this is what we mean. We mean wipe your butt with this, flush it down the toilet. You had a couple toilet paper brands at the time who had line extended into it, but didn't really care about it, and it wasn't a native brand to them. Natively, they meant the dry, scratchy, old school stuff. And so they could never really sell the new solution, the Fro 2. They could never really sell that evolve to the new solution without deprecating like the old. So that was really our like positioning out the gate that was powerful. And then from a branding perspective, we approached it differently than any other brand in our category, but I would say any other brand really in the store, that it was going to be like a little, crude and like loud and talk to you and have fun with you and stuff like that. So like the Dude Wipes brand, always we just felt we had to like keep it authentic and real. And that didn't really break through right away. So that's probably another interesting thing about category design. Like it's slow in the beginning. Like if you launch another greens, like you might be able to pop up and make a couple million in the first year because the greens market has been created or whatever. But when you can't really draft off of too much out there, it's slow. But then we had a lot of good growth and just kept building it. Obviously, people like the product. They like getting cleaner. They sort of then have, oh, I need to, incorporate this into my everyday routine. And Dude Wipe sort of helps in a fun way, like lets you know that you need to do that, come on board. So yeah, kind of the brand in combination with the category. We always say around here, one of our values is if you ain't first, you're last. And I think that represents category design. Like if you're not first to do something, you might as well be last. You might as well not even do it. And, we're the first native brand to our category. We were the first brand in wipes in general, any kind of wipes to ever bother talking to men. So we were the first to do a couple different things, slow in the beginning. But yeah, we're run rating it over, 200 million in POS with one product, just focused on a category, disrupting kind of the old way.
Right. Emily.
Don't forget Rashid at the end, Jim. When I was doing quote unquote research in the frozen aisle, trying to find a product that checked all my boxes for my kids, I realized a few things about frozen waffles. One, they were all full of things that I did not want to give my kids every day. Two, they all had kind of the same boring flavors. Like every brand had an original or a home style and a multigrain and a chocolate chip and a blueberry. And that was pretty much it. And then three, they were all kind of like dry and stale. Like they all felt like a trade-off. Like you reach for a frozen waffle when you don't have time to make something delicious from scratch in your kitchen. And so when I approached creating our products, I wanted to flip all of that on its head and do the exact opposite. So with our waffles, we don't have any of those things that I didn't want to give my kids every day. We don't have any preservatives. We don't use refined sugars. We use maple syrup as our sweetener. We don't use natural flavoring or artificial flavoring. It's just fruits, veggies, nuts, and spices doing the work. If you think about me standing in my home kitchen with my waffle maker, making our first formulas, like I didn't have natural or artificial flavorings at my disposal, so we don't use them. We don't use seed oils, we use avocado oil instead. And if you look at, across the full frozen waffle category landscape, there's really nobody else that are doing these things. Secondly, on the flavor profiles, I, as a mom, recognized that it would do nobody any good if I made the most nutritious waffle that no kids wanted to eat. So I decided, like, let's throw out the chocolate chip and the blueberry and the original and create these fun and delicious dessert-inspired flavors. So our best sellers are zucchini carrot cake and peanut butter banana bread. We've got apple cinnamon cobbler, mixed berry cobbler, chocolate zucchini bread. These are flavors that you've never seen before in the frozen waffle aisle. And then third, I wanted our waffles to feel like a hug, to be really comforting, not this kind of dry, stale experience. I wanted our waffles to be something that you reach for if you have 30 seconds in the morning, or if you have 3 hours in the morning to have a leisurely brunch with mimosas. So the texture is really different too. So, basically the hope was that we could create this kind of homemade experience without the homemade hassle. And that's how we approach the category.
Excellent. Last but not least, Rashid.
Thanks, Jim. So when Pete and I originally launched Chomps, it was almost like a side hustle, and we wanted to find a product that we could launch and focus on the CrossFit community. We saw that bubbling up, and we thought that it could be an opportunity to do something cool on the side. And the original premise was think about Omaha steaks, but a grass-fed, grass-finish, healthier option. We very quickly realized a few things. One was to be able to build a profitable business, you couldn't do it by shipping frozen. It was just really it was really expensive to do that without scale. And the other thing was that our moms were our best customers. Like we weren't really getting much traction, and it was really challenging. So, Pete had the idea that, he used to eat gas station snack sticks all the time. Could we make a better version of those and continue to really focus on CrossFit, paleo, keto partner? So that's how Chomps was born. It was really just this side hustle. But fast forward, as we start thinking about what the product offers and us building families and thinking more about what we're putting into not only our bodies, but our kids' body, it really changed into a mission. And I would have to attribute a lot of our success, not only the product itself, checking all the boxes for what somebody wants as far as a better for you snacking option, high protein, low sugar, tasty, convenient, highest quality ingredients. The company itself has always been about focus. Similar to AG1, we have a single product line. We're going to near $500 million in retail sales this year, and 90% of that is with 3 recipes. The business is not complicated. We thought long and hard about the product, and we're the very best at making sticks. And we happen to pick the best category within the jerky set. The stick format is the fastest growing within the overall jerky category. And then if you think about our go-to-market strategy, we also were very focused and disciplined. 4 years e-commerce only. We were fortunate to get Trader Joe's in 2016. We then leaned in and were the best Trader Joe's partner for 2 years before we decided to take a step into further retail. And then we focused on natural and then conventional and then mass. It was very, very focused on how we grew. And I think it's a testament to how we built the business, and it was able to allow us to make sure that we didn't have to overinvest in marketing or trade. We wanted consumers to already understand the value proposition that Chomps offered, and we didn't want to have to overinvest to do that. So it's been an exciting ride. There's a lot of white space that remains, especially in convenience and other small format locations, and we're excited to tackle that next.
Excellent. So, John, what lessons have you learned at Once Upon a Farm versus Annie's? Especially pertaining to the breadth of the categories you pursued.
I made a lot of mistakes at Annie's and learned from them. One of them is, in retrospect, we launched into too many categories too early, too small. Now, I'll say, like, we ended up being successful, not with all those products, a lot of them failed, but it was a different time then. The space was a lot different. It moved much slower. There was a lot less competition. But I think if we did that now, that strategy now would fail pretty badly. So what we did over here at Once Upon a Farm is we really focused on the core, and we just relentlessly pounded our core for years and years and years, really, as I said, until November of last year was really the first extension we did out of it. Business was well over 100 million at that time. And that was a huge lesson. There's some really great research that's been published by Bain on this for challenger brands and insurgent brands. And it basically says that the odds of category expansion outside of your core are exponentially higher once you've hit 50 million in your core. And a lot of small brands try to expand into other categories far, far earlier than that. It's not to say that they won't ever succeed, but it's just much, much harder. And so that was one of the biggest lessons, but there's been so many others too, but that's a big one.
That's very valuable information. Thanks, John. Sean, Dude Wipes has grown to be a category leader through very unorthodox marketing. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think our first lightning strike moment was in 2014. So we had only been in business like a year and a half or so. And we put a Dude Wipes logo on the back of a UFC fighter's trunk. So right on his butt. And to my knowledge, it was the first time that anybody had put a butt product like advertisement on a butt. And, it felt like kind of cool. Like we were like, hey, this should be something. And it was a pay-per-view fight on UFC. And then like the internet exploded when it hit. Dude Wipes was the #3 trend worldwide on Twitter for the night because this logo was on someone's butt. What is this thing? They're looking it up. We were relatively unknown, doing a couple $100,000 in sales. And all of a sudden we're having this like national media, blow up exposure moment. And so that was a good lesson early on, like got to put ourselves out there in different and unique ways. And there's like exponential upside to that. And how can it fit the brand? And how can we be not just designing category differently from a product perspective, but also marketing differently. And so viral marketing and like news jacking and all of those things are an evergreen part of our strategy, where we're just looking for something that's happening in pop culture that we can get involved with quickly, or looking for something really disruptive like that UFC butt logo. So yeah, as we grow, of course, you have the bigger tools to market with your mass media and trade spend and all of those things, but we will never abandon the stuff that our big competitors can't do that we've been doing since day one. And we still look at that as the most powerful things we can do because our competition can't do it. And that's what I'd recommend everybody to realize. What can you do that the big guys can't? And pound that over and over again, because it's just a competitive advantage.
Yep, no doubt. And I must say the poop emoji is definitely ubiquitous when it comes to Sean. And Derek Gould, one of our folks in the audience, says Pretty sure Sean invented bathroom marketing at Expo West. I think New Hope actually now sells bathroom mats, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, so you see a bathroom ad, of course we have to take it, but I don't.
Gotta go
They
for
were
it.
selling that to us, so we definitely didn't invent it, but we must have made some memorable ones that he liked.
And Emily, I think you did a major rebrand. Talk about that and what kind of impact that had on your business.
Yeah, our rebrand has been a total game changer for us. So we launched our rebrand in January 2024, just shy of being on shelf for 4 years. The week our new packaging hit shelves, we saw a 62% jump in same-store sales. Like nothing else changed. We weren't on promo, nothing. So it was just the packaging. I think we saw the spike for a couple reasons. One, I think a major mistake I made in designing our packaging, our original packaging as a first-time founder, was trying to fit into the category. My answer to the last question, it described all the ways that we are actually very different. But I guess I wanted to look like we belonged, right? Like I was an industry outsider. And so I wanted to feel like we fit in and make people think that we belong there. So this was our old packaging. I chose a white background. But the problem is that there are a lot of brands in our set with a white background. And so the problem is we just blended in and got lost. So this is the same SKU now, as you can see, totally different. Flipped it on its head, super bright. And all the statistics about shopper experiences say that you got like 2 seconds to catch a consumer's attention. And being in the frozen aisle, we're also behind a frosted freezer door. So we have to work extra hard to get that attention. So our packaging now is so bright that it is impossible to miss. Another thing we did with our rebrand that has made a huge impact is we took the height of our bags down a couple of inches. What we have found is that, one thing we did try to do different from day one was we put our waffles in bags instead of boxes. That is a true like mom experience. I hated boxes in my freezer that you couldn't close, and then there were frozen waffles falling all over the place. I wanted a resealable bag that protected against freezer burn, and you could roll it up and stick it in the back corner of your freezer when you got down to the last 1 or 2 waffles. So we did that differently from day one, except our packaging was taller than the rest of the packaging in the frozen set. And it meant that we were often on the top shelf or the bottom shelf, which were a little bit taller than the middle shelves in frozen waffles. And so we brought our packaging down a couple inches with the rebrand. And as a result, we've seen ourselves move kind of more towards eye level, which has also made a huge difference. I mean, merchandising is one of those things that can make a massive, massive difference in terms of velocities. And then lastly, again, I just talked, my first answer was about how, we're trying, the whole idea of Evergreen is that we are this vibrant, warm, homemade product. We don't want to feel like a trade-off. We want to be fun. We are delicious, kind of contrary to a lot of kind of the dry, stale stereotypes of frozen waffles. And our new packaging just aligns so much better with that concept. It is bright, it is fun, it is playful. Even the kind of the font on our logo is round and bubbles. It almost feels like a hug. So it's just kind of everything has come together to represent Evergreen so much better.
Great, thank you. We're going to go to audience Q&A in a minute. If you have a question, there's a Q&A button down on the bottom. You can pop it in there. And Christy, if you would go to upcoming events for Naturally Chicago for a second, that'd be great. First and foremost, we've got our Founders Gala coming up October 10th. We're honoring Brandon Bernholt, the chairman of KeHE, Tony Olson, the chairman of Spins, Bill Weiland, the CEO of Presence Marketing, who just had a big exit today with Siete, who he played a key role in helping to create. Congratulations, Bill. And our MC is Karuna Rawal from Nature's Find. 250 people, Fulton Market, amazing party. Come on out if you can. There's only a few tickets left, so get them now before they sell out. Chicago Seed Co. is a group of investors that we now operate, about 60 investors, VC, family office, angel. We're presenting Raising Equity and Debt Capital on October 22nd. It's going to be at Taste 22, which is Cleveland Avenue, the $1 billion fund launched by Don Thompson. We'll have a lot of investors and brands talking about their experiences. And then we'll also have 10 brands that are seeking capital having tables. So it's going to be a fun event. Come on out. And last but not least, our Day of the Dead party, October 30th. If you live in Chicago and you're a Naturally Chicago member, you probably come. It's a blast. So come on out before tickets sell out. Okay, now Q&A. Let's see. Good question. And I'll just throw it out there to the group. If you went back to the first 6 months of starting your brand and product, what would you do differently knowing what you know now? Anybody want to answer that one?
I'll just jump in there and say I would not bother trying to call the biggest retailers in the world and convince them they needed to talk to me, because that was a complete waste of my time and would have just been laser focused on online sales where I could directly control my own destiny without dealing with kind of gatekeepers and everything like that. So wasted time doing that way too early.
Anybody else on this one?
I would say, I mean, I think in early days, a lot of times we would look at brands and other founders that we really respected and we would follow suit a little bit. Like if so-and-so implemented something or used this tool, we thought that that would help us succeed. And we now know that, you know, we'll take all the information we can, but we'll process it to make sure that it's Chomp specific and it makes sense for what we're trying to do. But in the early days, it's very easy to look at others and copy a little bit. But you can take the information, but process it to make sure it makes sense for what you want to accomplish.
Got it. Allison Bloom asks, as a founder, what daily habits or routines have been crucial in helping you stay focused amidst the demands of running a business? Anybody have anything they want to share?
Sure. I protect thinking time. So I actually block it in my calendar so nobody can touch it. And sometimes I'll choose to use it differently, but very often I'll just sit back and either look at data or look at my notes from meetings I've been in and think about issues we're facing and just think. And I think that's been really, really helpful for me to show up as a leader in a way that helps us solve problems and really think ahead.
Excellent. I've got a question for Kat. While AG1 is truly a market leader, you're now starting to face stiff competition. You know, I looked up AG1 when we started planning this webinar on my phone. You know, since then, of course, like every other social media ad is one of your competitors like Suja or others. How are you dealing with increased competition?
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is if it's a category worth being in, whether you start it or you jump in it, there's going to be alternate options for the consumer. And so just know it and be excited about it. Look at it as evidence that you're doing something right and different, especially if you are in fact the category creator. So a couple of approaches. One is we focus on the customer, not the competition. Of course, we look at kind of consistent with what Rashid was bringing out. Like you want to know what's going on and be aware of how things are being positioned. But we are obsessed with our customer, our category that we created, and continually raising the bar of the quality, research, and efficacy standard in the space. The other is, while there's competition, I don't know that I would call it stiff competition in some cases, because often the approaches that some brands take doing what you pointed out, which is very lowbrow, this versus that ads, it's a very played out marketing technique, and it seems to be driving more people to us then people away from us. And it only creates a separation of who's the premium player versus who's trying to take share and draft. And I get it. I mean, some great fighter brands have been born by saying, oh, there's this big leader that's out there alone. We do something different and special. So I applaud people who push up the quality of the category, don't necessarily spend our energy on those who are dragging it down with techniques we really wouldn't step into.
Got it.
Can I add something to that too?
Sure.
The validation of the category you're creating is measured in the number of companies coming in and trying to compete with you. So continuing to focus on the development of the category and solving the problem that you identified, like that is what's going to make this successful. And everybody that comes in is going to boost and further entrench you as that category leader. You know, that's the idea. And I think that sounds exactly right to me from a category design perspective.
And I think of, Emily, what you're doing with flavors and lack of fillers, if you will. And that's going to be hard for some companies to chase at scale. The level of investment in clinical research and third-party certifications, we're creating a new standard. And so I hope more people, it's good for the customer if more people chase what we do. It's going to raise their cost of doing business. But I honestly hope it creates a whole wave of people who step up what they do from a quality and innovation standpoint. It would be fantastic for all of us as consumers.
Excellent. You know, John, you spoke recently on LinkedIn about achieving growth through incrementality. Can you share your thoughts about this with our audience?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is, you know, if you do something, if you're solving a need that has been yet unmet, like a lot of founders do, like Cassandra did when she was like, hey, I would really love it if somebody sold fresh baby food, but there's none in the grocery store and I'm making it myself. You know, at that time there was like, depending on what research you looked at, 40 or 50% of the consumers that could be buying baby food were not buying it at grocery stores because they're making it themselves. And so when you develop a product like that, you inherently are very likely to bring a lot of new consumers into a category. And so, you know, our brand is highly incremental. In some places, it's up to 70% incremental to the category when we show up. And when you do that and can and prove that in data, it becomes undeniable for retailers and all your partners. And so, I always encourage people when they're thinking about innovation, really focus on incrementality. It is really, really the silver bullet. If you can get that right, you can really, really unlock lots of growth for you and your retailers.
Awesome. Thank you, John. All right, we've only got a minute or two left, so lightning round, closing thoughts. We'll start with Rashid.
Yeah, I think to John's point, I think incrementality is critical in thinking about what the repeat rate is of your how often your customers are coming back and buying the product and at what frequency is critical to help contribute to that. And yeah, stay focused. Like I think at the end of the day, you know, you really have to have a hero product to scale. So find that product and stay focused on it.
Emily.
Yeah, I think also how powerful data is, you know, even at our stage, it has been so empowering to us to have access to data that can help us tell our story. And, you know, we're the fastest growing Better For You frozen waffle brand by both dollars and velocities. That's an incredible story to be able to walk in and tell the retailers. It also helps us allocate our relatively small resources at this stage too, right? Like if we have a retailer who's killing it over here and a retailer that's a little bit slower, we know we can reallocate our resources and be really proactive instead of reactive. Something we didn't talk about on the panel is, you know, building retailer relationships and how important that is towards becoming a category king, and showing a retailer and a buyer that you can be proactive instead of reactive, I think goes a really long way.
Yeah.
Just reinforce this theme of focus on your differentiator and your mission, and do your best to not be distracted by what can be noise and take you off of your mission. And don't be afraid to keep changing. We've even 14 years in D2C, we've changed our packaging 3 or 4 times. It's quite amusing to look at the original days, and that innovation will continue. So don't be afraid to experiment.
John.
Yeah, I'd say think of your business as a rolling experiment because it really is. And constantly look for learning, be willing to take risks, quickly pivot on those, and just really try to get, as Rashid said, onto that core. And once you get on that core, just pound the core. And just know it's not all going to go perfectly. You're going to have days where you take a couple steps back. Just get up that next day and take a few more steps forward. And best of luck for all of you.
Sean.
Yes, do something you love. It's something that like you can be motivated about and passionate about growing and moving forward. Because if you don't, you're not really going to be that innovative compared to people who do love like the cause that they're in, and you're going to go through a lot of shit and you'll end up giving up. So if you don't start with that foundational sort of like love and passion for what you're doing, it's not really going to work out. I always tell people like if you don't like dogs, like don't start a dog food brand. Like there's just some but some people just want to like chase the money or chase the trend or whatever, and you don't want to do that. You want to be in it for the right reasons, and then you'll figure out all the other stuff along the way.
Great. All right, Mike, it's yours to bring on home.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I would say is what we've heard from everybody here in different degrees is like fighting consensus, non-consensus, sometimes reversing assumptions that you have about a category. You should have a shelf-stable product that can last a long time because profit margins are going to be higher. It's more expensive to do it this way. Reversing those assumptions. I'm going to close with this ripoff from Kylan Lundeen, who's the CMO at Qualtrics. But he told me once, and I thought this was really, really appropriate to this conversation, there are different ways of thinking consensus and non-consensus. And there's a good way to check if you're in the non-consensus versus the consensus. Consensus success, great. You know, you did a good job, terrific, pat on the back. Consensus failure, you failed. Nobody's mad at you. Everybody thought that it was the right idea. So you did this consensus idea and it failed. What are you going to do? Non-consensus success, you're brilliant, maybe on this panel have done something incredible and developed an entirely new market, and you've come up with an amazing idea. Non-consensus failure, what is wrong with you? You've totally ruined everything and you've destroyed it because of the most idiotic idea that anybody's ever heard of. If you don't have that fear of non-consensus failure, you're probably not operating on the right side of consensus. And you're probably aiming towards that 24%. So there are ways to mitigate those disastrous situations, but that fear should be a part of what you're doing when you're starting to build this stuff. And that's how I'll leave it.
Right. Thank you. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our audience. We'll be sending out a blog post with a discussion of today's webinar as well as a recording. So thank you all.
Thank you.